Simon Arrell has published a new paper this month. He's a computational social scientist based entirely now, I think, at MIT. And he started in the same discipline as myself, information systems. I've never met him, but I think he might have reviewed one of my papers once. That sort of thing is done anonymously, but you're allowed to nominate reviewers. And certainly one of the reviewers seemed to know a lot about his work. And he's one of the few information systems researchers who regularly publishes in Science and Nature, the two best journals in the world. And this paper is no different. It's called The Spread of True and False News Online, published in Science. So let's have a look. What Simon Arrell and his two co-authors did was assemble a data set of tweets and examined how those tweets cascade through the users of Twitter. Now let's say that I claim that my children have been kidnapped by aliens. That story to most people is patently untrue, but if someone discussed the story saying a man has claimed that his children have been kidnapped by aliens, that story would be true in one sense because I did just claim that my children have been kidnapped by aliens. Now, to avoid all of this, what the authors did was go to fact-checking organisations like Snopes. There's a list of them on page 2. Hoaxslayer.com, urbanlegends.com. And those organisations have verified a number of stories as being either true or false. Then to assemble their data set, what they did was they searched Twitter for a link to those organisations in reply to someone else's tweet. So someone has tweeted something and then someone has replied to that tweet, and in the reply they have linked to one of these organisations. And the authors grabbed the reply and worked backwards to find the original tweet, and it was the original tweet that they studied. And what did they study about it? They grabbed a bunch of metrics about it. So this is an illustration of how one of the original tweets cascaded through Twitter. The depth is the number of levels that the tweet gets to, just in terms of it being retweeted, not in terms of it being replied to or commented on. The size is the number of people who have been involved in retweeting it. The breadth is the number of people at any one level. And the virality is a measure of the average distance between any two pairs of people in the cascade. So the authors assembled a data set of tweets where it is known whether or not the tweet is true or false, along with those metrics about size and depth and breadth. Now they did a bunch of other stuff that we won't go into in this video, but what they did with the data set that I've just described is they looked for differences. So differences in the size of the cascades when the news story is true and when the news story is false. Differences in the breadth, differences in the depth, and they found differences across the board. In fact, false news spread further, deeper and more broadly than true news. And the people who were involved in spreading it were less active on Twitter. So they followed fewer people and they had fewer followers and they wrote fewer tweets. Now, it's important to note that this is describing these cascades. It is not describing how the world gets its news. So yesterday, very sadly, Professor Stephen Hawking died, and that was immediately all over social media, but most of the tweets about that were original. They weren't retweets. So the news spread all over the world, but it didn't spread in these sort of cascades. So the authors are not claiming that false news spreads over the planet more than true news. Instead, it's describing how false and true news spread through cascades. And they also found that more novel tweets tended to be shared more often, and tweets about false news stories tended to be more novel than tweets about true news stories. And that may be the beginnings of an explanation of why. So if I'm going to retweet something, I want it to be interesting for my followers. If I judge a tweet to be interesting already, I'll just hit retweet. Whereas if it's not interesting enough, I'll rewrite it and try and make it more interesting before I send it out. And if I do that, it would have been included in the dataset as an additional cascade, not part of an existing cascade. Now, the data set did not include, or could not include, whether or not the people who were retweeting the stories believed them or not. So we don't know if the people who were retweeting actually believed that they were true or thought that they were false, or if they were retweeting them in an ironic way, or if they were retweeting them in a "I'm so shocked that this is true" kind of way. Now, the paper suggests a number of additional research questions that people could now look at. And in fact, they list a few of these at the end. And one of them is about human behaviour, about why people choose to share a news story or choose not to share a news story. Now, if you wanted to do a study like this, the tools to automatically grab and analyse tweets are freely available. In fact, we've done a previous video about that. These authors obviously have a connection with Twitter because they've got access to every tweet ever sent. Now, you wouldn't have that, but it wouldn't stop you putting together a study like this on a smaller scale. And I've put some links down at the bottom to tools and to resources to help you get started on that sort of thing if you're interested. And if you like these videos, please subscribe down there as well.